Hello and welcome to Radio Free Nintendo. It is August 3rd, 2023. Welcome to August, and this is episode 834. I'm your host, James Jones. I'm joined today by Greg Leahy.
Ahoy, everyone.
Guillaume Vayette.
I'm Guillaume.
Is that your new premiered?
Yeah, it was suggested by Pipico, wrote in for, to say a la Daisy. So I thought I would try it at least.
But
so
doesn't Daisy say, done. Hi, I'm Daisy?
Yeah.
She does.
Yeah, okay. So, hi, I'm Guillaume.
God,
then I have to keep saying it. That's the whole point, right?
You should just come off the top rope like Missile. He just screams, "It's Missile!" Anytime somebody starts to describe you, you can just drop in from above.
Sure. Anyway, so I tried it. I don't think it will stick, but we'll see. We'll see.
You should practice them during the week as you're calling people and talking to people or just meeting up with Karen.
Yeah, sure.
Lastly, the Iron Man himself is back, rusted and rotting away. Mr. John Lindemann.
It's great to be back, James. It's like I never left.
It's not, because you left for 2 straight weeks.
It's like it. It's similar.
Did you listen to any seconds of the 2 episodes you were not on?
I mean, come on, James. I mean, no.
Okay. There is an email, and we're going to start with this, because fuck
there
it.
Always is.
No, there's an email that was addressed to you, so we decided to answer it in your stead. If you had given me more than 2 hours of warning, you would not be present.
What I find funny is that you act like that's almost incentive for me to listen. Like I have to listen for legal reasons or something to.
Yeah, you do, because we actually made a commitment in your name.
Oh man.
The email was simply asking, what is it going to take to get you, John Lindemann, to play Pikmin 4?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you've grown up a little bit. Maybe you've aged into a fine Pikmin player. Maybe your previous thoughts about Pikmin are now open to reinterpretation. And we actually settled on something we thought was really important. See, we looked at your love for Monster Hunter Rise and Monster Hunter Rise Sunbreak and spent a bunch of time thinking about why you like that game and its expansion. And we realized what it is. You like amiibo support dogs. If there was an amiibo for Ochi in this game, we believe that you would have bought it.
I guess we'll never know.
Well, we might, because Nintendo seems to like to release amiibo like 9 months after a game comes out. We're still waiting on the Xenoblade Chronicles 3 amiibo.
Yeah, I mean, I just like to look at stuff like that as a beautiful mystery,
Oh, well, when they announce it in 2025 that there's now Ochi amiibo, I'll look forward on finding out if our theory was correct and you would go buy it. But yeah, we answered that for you. So Nintendo, if you're listening, and I know you are, get on making an Ochi amiibo.
I have no malice against Pikmin. Or it's various sequels. It's like I peacefully coexist with Pikmin as a series. I wish it the best. I wish it well. I'm sure they're a series of perfectly fine games that the Nintendo faithful consume and enjoy.
Guillaume, I need you to go find all the time John Lindemann said some variant of fuck Pikmin and put it in here now.
Now, maybe I might have been a bit more. Maybe I might have been a bit more immature at that time.
That was like a month ago.
I've mellowed out. Things change.
It would be
people
sooner,
change.
except
James.
you were gone for 2 weeks.
I wasn't. Since when have I said fuck Pikmin? I haven't said that. Did I say that?
I don't know. You can't prove that you haven't said it. So as far as we're concerned, you have said it.
I think you basically did in June. Now you were riffing, but still, I'm pretty sure that general sentiment escaped your lips. Regardless, so we are committing you to playing Pikmin 4 if Nintendo announces an Ochi amiibo. That's just the way it is. because I can't be wrong.
This is where the other
that
way that we talked about that might get you to play it comes into play is the chair from A Clockwork Orange.
Yeah,
that's right.
That's
Results will be manifested.
I also think that somebody out there is somebody's listening and will be going back through old episodes and finding where I said fuck Pikmin.
Oh, please, I'm begging
Somebody
you.
surely has.
Like there are worse uses of your time. I'm not sure what they are, but I'm sure there are. So go for it. Send us a supercut. We'll put it in the episode. But yeah, I want to talk about Pikmin 4 because I've been playing Pikmin 4. I didn't talk about it last week because I wasn't playing Pikmin 4 at that point. I didn't actually plan on buying it or even playing the demo. Like I've talked about this. Mm-hmm. I played the first Pikmin and walked away kind of, I'll say ambivalent is probably the word for it. Maybe a little bit less than ambivalent.
So was that 20 years ago or recently?
Yeah, it was no, when it came out.
Okay.
I bought it new. And then Pikmin 2, I remember the reviews were like, hey, it's more Pikmin, but longer. And I'm like, I definitely don't want that. And so I punted on 2. And then I bought 3 on Wii U when it was, they did like the fire sale of physical Wii U games. So I ended up with it then. And I never played it. But Friday I had I hurt myself on a bike, which is not the first time that's happened. It won't be the last. This injury was not hospital visit necessitating, but for a couple days there, I was pretty sore, and so I was basically just stuck in rest, like either hobbling between my sofa and my bed. And so I played the Pikmin 4 demo, enjoyed it well enough, and because I wasn't going anywhere and I had a voucher, I bought it. As of this moment, I am in what I believe to be the last cave, and you guys can tell me if I'm accurate. I'm going to describe it very vaguely. There's like 20 levels.
Don't spoil it for me, James.
I'm not. And I am chasing somebody who is a dumbass.
Okay. Yeah. Damn, you must have been playing a lot.
Everything, all of the stages are 100%ed except for the contents of this cave.
Right. Yeah.
And I've got one of the leaf guys I need to save. That's it. Content-wise, I'm just burning through this game. Yeah, I played it a lot over the course of the weekend. I think I probably put about 20 hours in over the last week. Now, the other thing is I can't work out. And I work out like 10 hours a week. So I had to do something with that time. So it was like, what am I going to do with that time? I guess I'm going to play Pikmin 4. So yeah, I've played a lot of it. I'm basically done. If we weren't recording, I'd be finishing it up right now. I'm going to give some weird kind of scattershot thoughts here of why I'm connecting with this more than I think Pikmin 1. One of them is just the fidelity of control. I've missed years of control improvements in the Pikmin franchise. But this game just feels pretty good. I have issues with it sometimes. I feel like sometimes it's not always easy to lock on to the target I want. There are times where I'm trying to throw stuff, especially things that are underwater. Like I'm trying to get somebody to pick them up. And they just miss and then just stand at the bottom of the water staring at a thing that's obviously right in front of them, not doing a goddamn thing.
I wonder if there's advanced water refraction going on here where you think that you're aiming your Pikmin in a place and then it's not where you actually think it is.
Yeah. And the other issue is you don't tend to lock onto things underwater.
Right.
So I think that is actually what's going on.
I didn't do this that often because I was kind of loath to not be using Ochi a lot of the time, but obviously if you're using your astronaut guy, then you can sort of stand on the underwater, as if it's just regular ground. You know? So it tends to be better when you're dealing with it that way. If you are swimming on Ochi and sending blue Pikmin down, that's where it tends to get the issues.
Yeah, and that lines up with my experience. But I feel like the challenges are constructed better, and I say this with the following statement that's going to come right afterwards, around setting up the stage, and so it feels much more like what I've talked about that I enjoy about the old Xenoblade X expeditions. I'm gonna draw this parallel here, so go with it for a minute.
Well, last week we talked about how the suspicious amount of castaways and
you sure did.
Mirror-esque, so I mean they just keep piling up.
So I one of the things that I really got enjoyed about exploring Mira was not the initial expedition. It was the preparatory work to go run the expedition. Because I'm going to be gone for a while. I need to figure out where I'm going to go. I need to lay out a route to make sure I see what I need to see, all that stuff. Especially when you're going to a new continent. There's a lot of that here where I might spend a day or two. I'm on day 50, I think. I'll probably wrap up around day 52, if I had to guess. I might spend, a day or two just prepping the ground for actually going out and picking stuff up. I had a day in this last area, the very first day. I was busy the whole time, but my percentage completion stayed at 0. Now, but the next day it jumped to like 25.
Yeah, because that percentage is kind of really leveraged on like the rescues, I think.
Yes.
So yeah, you could do loads of stuff that's setting you up to rescue, the castaways and, get into those caves or transport the treasures, which obviously, kind of, will count to that percentage as well. But if you don't actually do it on a particular day, it doesn't really capture that, what you've achieved there.
So it's like a lot of building, resource collection, clearing out enemies, dealing with things that I need this specific Pikmin to do. There might be every stage has its default 3 colors that it thinks are the best choice, and it'll load you up with those if you ask for them. But sometimes you'll come across like, I really need to freeze this lake, and that's not the default color, and I need 80 fucking ice Pikmin to do it. Mm-hmm. Well, that's basically I need to reset today. So I'll run back to base, get 80 ice Pikmin out, go freeze them, do the thing, bring them back. It's a lot of like that kind of setup. And usually if there's something that requires you to do something like that, either there's no reason to go back to that spot after you pick up the thing. Like it's just there's one thing you pick up and you come back, or you unlock a shortcut to not need 80 ice Pikmin to get back there later. And so I do whatever that is. I build out whatever walls I can build, or, the stick ladders or the bridges. I clear out debris. I clear out enemies to create highways for Pikmin to go through so I don't have to monitor them. That's the big thing I've picked up on is like monitoring the lanes so I don't have to babysit them essentially. And I had a thought as I was playing it, because I'd forgotten you mentioned the Mira line, Greg. And I was listening to the episode last week, and I was like, oh yeah, Greg had the same thought. At one point, I had a school tour group.
Yes.
A travel agency.
Mm-hmm.
A fucking influencer.
Yep.
And, another person who's supposed to be able to rescue people himself, all show up from the same return trip. And my thought was, we're in fucking New LA, aren't we? This is goddamn New LA. And then I thought about it for a while. If they never leave the confines of New LA, this could totally be New LA. Because there's no monsters in New LA. But bugs, because that's what the enemies are in this game. They're bugs. Yeah, there'd be bugs. And abandoned buildings. Yeah, if you've ever actually explored New LA, they just dropped a bunch of suburban houses on Mira, and nobody lives in them. That part of town is completely empty. One of them even has a swimming pool. This is fucking Mira, boys. This is it. I did it. I'm going to get to the end credits, and they're going to reveal something about Lao, aren't they? You could just tell me. I'm ready for it. They're going to tell me about what he turned into at the end of the game, aren't they? This is what it is. God. What if that gel, what if that gel that you pick up, the nectar, is actually the goo that the ganglion are afraid of? I'm just saying, like, it would explain why all of these fucking little people from all over the galaxy are being brought here who have no purpose. I mean, when they put New LA's castaways together, somebody said, we need to make sure we have a good pizza chef on here who's also a psychopath. And they put him on the list. Like, are you telling me that they wouldn't put an influencer on there? They'd absolutely put an influencer on there. Mira is a terrible planet, and I think this is the only explanation for why literally every ship that comes to this place crashes. There's never been a ship that has successfully landed on the planet of Pikmin, ever. It's truly remarkable.
Olimar, I think in like every game has hinted that like he felt that something was bringing him to the planet. So, I don't know if that is like a divine force.
That is literally the key plot of Xenoblade X.
Yeah.
So there is a divine force that drew them to the planet every time.
Mm-hmm.
And it's from all over the galaxy. And there's a scene as you're going into the last stage of this game where the characters are talking about, wow, we have people from all worlds, from all over the place, and they're all so different. What a wild thing that they all ended up here. And I'm like, I remember having this conversation with a bunch of pizza-obsessed weapons dealers, a bunch of people in suits that eat human waste, and a bunch of guys who used to live in caves that fought each other until somebody gave them cooler weapons, and now they're fighting a bigger, dumber war. And everybody was like, thumbs up, smiley face there too. I'm like, this is fucking Xenoblade. God damn it. Everywhere you look, it's there. It is, like you said, it was 20 years ago, but this is a dramatically more player-friendly game than I remember from back then.
Yeah, and I mentioned, like how the games might have difficulty differentiating, or like the casual observer might not might have trouble differentiating between the games. Like, what is the hook in this one? And I completely forgot. They gave the space person a fucking dog. That's the hook. So this one differentiates itself. And on the Discord, we had fun trying to figure out what would be the hook for the next ones. No More said, give the Pikmin little pickup trucks. And then someone was like, ditch the Pikmin, have the pickup trucks driven by dogs. And then... yeah, it just kind of escalated pretty quickly.
Well, I mean, if I'm right, if I'm right, why can't they join the Blade organization? We had a I can't remember what the name of the weapons dealers / pizza addicts race is, but one of them got to join Blade. Why can't Olimar and crew join Blade? Then they get Skells. That would be the ultimate. Like, imagine if you went from Pikmin scale to Skell scale. What a pivot a game would be. Also, you could just pick up all the items on the ground and just stomp on all the bugs. And think about how gratifying that would be to like the ones that can suck up a whole bunch of Pikmin at one time. How gratifying it would be to just drop a giant mech foot on that thing. Not even just there's nothing even to collect afterwards. You just hear the squish. And then you lift your foot and there's nothing. It's just, it feels so good. It feels so good. But we haven't, I know in the past the idea was like, oh, this is Earth, but it's been abandoned a really long time. Nah. There's still fresh food sitting on a grill that was turned off. Like, this was abandoned an hour ago, at best.
Yeah, it was immediately after the Rapture or something.
Or before the Langoliers just ate everything up.
Yeah. Oh, God. I wonder how many people actually get that reference.
God. I was just going to say it was immediately after the blade bodies turned off. Which is a plot valid thing that could happen in that game. I'm just saying, like, I know Lao's in there somewhere. You're going to fucking tell me what's going on? Tell me. I do think one other thing I did see in the Discord, and this came up a couple days ago, is someone suggesting that Ochi might be the best boy in gaming, and if you have that opinion, you are so wrong. Because you need to play fucking Ghost Trick. You need to play fucking Ghost Trick.
You can't really argue against Missile.
No, because Ochi, that's the one thing about Ochi that I kind of don't like, besides the fact it doesn't have front feet, and it really should, is that it doesn't really have much personality. It just kind of barks and does act. It's not. It's just active. Is probably the only way of describing it. There's not there's not much playful about Ochi except in those intro videos that only exist to hide the fact that the game has hellacious load times.
Oh, and he sort of does the little run around.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, like, he's a working dog, you know, like he's a rescued pup. So
I had a working dog. They have working dogs have more personality than friggin' anything. Because if they're not working, their brain still is. And they need something to do. Don't let them get bored. You regret it instantly. I don't know. It would have been, if they characterized Ochi a little bit better, I think it would have made it more compelling.
There's more than one, rescue dog in Pikmin 4. I mean, you can even have a debate about which one of those. It's just but I mean, Missile is, obviously it gets into story stuff, but it is, nah.
Missile has so much personality, that it's overwhelming how much personality Missile, literally and figuratively. It's Missile. It's just Missile. It just is. If you're writing about a dog, go play Ghost Trick. If you're not writing about a dog, go play Ghost Trick. If you played Ghost Trick, go play Ghost Trick. But yeah, this game's really good. And, obviously it wasn't in the quarterly numbers that came out today because it was not in the last quarter. But they didn't put out a press release, the back padding press release, but I'm not sure.
The spiking of the football, we haven't seen that yet. I mean, it seems like it's been off to a pretty good start in Japan, at least, where we get to see the numbers, very, very sort of precisely week by week. It seems like he's doing pretty well. It's already over 500,000 and, pretty much dominating the charts there for now. But, obviously, you might think there would be a little bit. If there was a really, really great story to tell, we might have heard a little bit more already in terms of, it's, this many percentage, kind of greater than Pikmin 3 Deluxe or, whatever, just the series in general to this point or whatever. But I guess the other problem is, even if it were like fairly significant increases over.
This is where I was going.
Over the previous games, like, it's still a bit small beer compared to what they normally spike the football for. Like, the Tears of the Kingdom numbers that we did get, or it's like, it's nearly sold 20 million in 18 and a half or whatever it is in 8 weeks. It's, if it's like, if Pikmin 4, as opposed to Pikmin 3 is like going to end up selling, like twice as much, like 6 million or something. Like that's a, damn good growth, but it's not, it's not really the kind of numbers that they tend to celebrate because they're just too bloody big.
I don't know that they can put out another press release after they did the one for Tears of the Kingdom where they're like, in the first weekend, Tears of the Kingdom sold 10 million units. And we're like, what the fuck? So
it was kind of interesting, actually, the sort of the graphic where they showed that this was the best sell-through for a first quarter of a, fiscal year. As this, when you go April, through June. Is the first quarter of the fiscal year for Nintendo, and that's obviously a lot of it was Tears of the Kingdom. Of course, you can see like they've just got the big chunk of the bar that is like about half roughly. I think basically is like just Tears of the Kingdom making that up. But if you look at it, even the non-Tears of the Kingdom bar, so that's all the other first party sell through that happened in that quarter, is higher than any of the pre-pandemic quarters. So, that in itself is kind of impressive because you got to think, with Tears of the Kingdom taking up so much of the oxygen, for that, they didn't do a lot else, did they? In April we had Advance Wars, which was belated and pretty low key because of that and also, the nature of it. And then of course we had in June, the very last day of June, the Showpony in,
Right.
You know, which presumably was just like a fart in the wind, just, you know, especially for that quarter, you know, like one day's meager sales or whatever. So, you know, they set the stage for Zelda to just be the whole quarter, like Zelda and the catalogue, obviously. And it shows you how well the catalogue did. I think presumably significantly boosted by the Mario movie effect. You know, a bunch of the Mario games in the catalogue, you know, didn't necessarily do huge numbers, but they got significant boosts and have kind of moved up the charts of the lifetime sales as a result of that Mario bump. So, you know, I guess you're always going to wonder what would have been the case if they'd had something that was actually a new product to go with it. But definitely seems like, you know, kind of early signs of a dividend, you know, beyond just the immediate earnings from the movie itself.
I had a suspicion that Tears of the Kingdom might have also got people to blow the dust off Switches that had been sitting idle and going back and hitting the back catalog as a consequence.
Yeah, most likely.
I think that's a reasonable assumption.
I did enjoy the very reserved way that they worded this in their press release. Quote, Switch business during the first quarter got off, it talks a little about what the quarter was. And it rolls into talking about Tears of the Kingdom got off to a good start, recording sales of 18.51 million units. Got off to a good start, selling 20 fucking million units. And I think it ended up being like 6 weeks and a couple days. And it's like, oh yeah, it was just a good start. Just a fine beginning.
Yeah, I think Breath of the Wild sort of presumably had a little bit of a bump as well, and thus crossed the 30 million threshold.
Yes.
So that's, I mean, it still might, yeah, Tears of the Kingdom for as burning hot as the start is, might struggle to get there because it's not going to have, you know, several years, presumably, to kind of, sell with the console the way that did being a launch day thing. But still, it's kind of remarkable. Just putting them together now, you know, those two games still doesn't quite add up to Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, but the fact that it even gets close is kind of amazing.
Or the fact that we have to combine two games to even get close to Mario Kart 8 is bizarre. But it's true. We do have to do that. And that's amazing also. Yeah, so that's all I've got on Pikmin 4, and also it's absolutely bonkers sell-through. I mean, just ridiculous sales. But no, the Showpony was not in there. Also, we went all last week without mentioning Showpony.
Yeah, it's good that we did manage 1 week with that. But no, don't forget, I mean, the real sort of like, accomplishment of having the best first quarter ever is that the Animal Crossing first quarter. Now, of course, Animal Crossing did release in the previous quarter. You know, it made it to the end of the fiscal year prior. But it still was enormous in April. And the whole, you know, sort of effect of the pandemic, the onset of restrictions and things in that also just completely turbocharged the results that time. So yeah, obviously, yeah, if Animal Crossing had literally released in April or something, yeah, it wouldn't have beat it, I'm sure. But to be able to beat that quarter, considering that it still was hugely powered by the phenomenon that Animal Crossing was, and then the more broad effect of, the pandemic restrictions and everything, that's pretty damn impressive. Definitely a testament to the power of Zelda, but also that kind of long tail in the sort of breadth sense of, you know, all the size of the catalogue and just how many games can, you know, still be sold to, how many different titles are still, because I don't think there were that many, there really weren't very many at all that actually sold like 1 million, kind of in that time period, but it's the breadth of it that's powering that. Obviously, in one way it's super narrow because it's Zelda doing half the work, but the other half is much more distributed amongst a bunch of things, but especially like the various Mario things and so forth.
So I mean, I don't know if y'all have any additional Pikmin thoughts you wanted to go into? Because I assume by now y'all both cleared the game completely.
Yeah, well, I'm almost completely done. For all intents and purposes, I am done because so there is more to the post-game, post-credit content than kind of the continuation of the story that you've been on. There's some stuff, like if you go talk to Olimar, and then that I would suggest to people, like if you're planning on farming purple Pikmin to get that final piece of treasure that requires you to have a lot of purple Pikmin, maybe do some other stuff before, because it's going to make the farming a little bit easier. But
yeah, I was looking at that and I was like, huh.
Yeah, so there's that, and there's even more kind of challenges, Dandori challenges that you can do. But they have, I guess I didn't realize, like I wasn't paying too much attention, I suppose, but they each have, like, it's a series of 10 challenges that have their own victory parameters. Anyway, but I thought it was like, oh yeah, collect everything. And I just could not figure out how to do it. Like, I was just like, what the hell am I doing wrong? This is so, the time limit is so tight and I can't do it. And it's just like 3, fire icons out of 5. Like, I can't do this. And then it turned out that particular mission was just like destroy the enemies. So I was like, okay, that's way more manageable.
Nice.
Way more manageable.
Yeah, they do vary that set, and there was one that I was genuinely shocked that they actually did something like it. It seemed quite un-Pikmin to me. One of those. I don't know if you can. I don't want to give it away anything about that, because it's about as deep as the sort of post game gets almost. Yeah. But it was kind of like, well, we're doing this. Okay, it's kind of different for Pikmin. But yeah, I was impressed with the amount of stuff that was there. So some of it almost felt like it could either have been, if not paid DLC, it could have been like something they would update the game with later. That they might hold it back for like something like that. But it's certainly is a lot of stuff relative to previous Pikmin games.
Yeah, and I'm still trying to do the kind of the missions that the little guys give you, and one of them is platinum all the Dandori missions, so I'm trying to do that.
Yeah, see, I've not done that by any means, so it's like, it's not a truly 100% or anything, but in terms of the treasures and the rescues, that's all done.
Yeah.
There's more that I could come back to, because it is, especially like some of those latter challenges kind of really... Because the problem is with some of the Dandori challenges you get during the game, like just getting a pass, getting like bronze is not, it doesn't really like force you to be that efficient. And I hadn't gone back to many of those, to try and get like a platinum medal or anything. But with some of the later ones, it is more like, okay, yeah, no, just to get through this at all, it kind of forces you to be more efficient. It kind of also, like, I don't know, sort of reintroduce that sort of element of the game to me, really, of like, yeah, like this is a bit more like old, elements of older Pikmin games. But it's kind of, I think it's interesting the way that they, fold some of those Dandori challenges and battles into the single player game. I have a feeling, this is just, my sort of projection on it, speculation, but it does kind of feel like in the past, they've had like missions and they've had multiplayer battles in those games, and maybe they feel like people didn't play them as much as they could have done or should have done.
Right.
Like they're just like, people played it one player, the campaign, and just kind of ignored that stuff on the side. And they're like, okay, this time we're going to put it in the single player game. Like, you have to do some of it, is it? Almost. I don't know whether you really have to, but, it's there. It's in the mainline kind of quest of the game to, battle, some of these, leaflings and then, rescue them, or, to do the challenges that the leaflings, kind of pose to you and then rescue them, so that it's like, okay, no, these are in the game, they're real. Either you learn about them, and then you'll be more likely to actually go and play them in multiplayer, or just play the challenges to get the better medals, because you've been kind of forced into acknowledging they exist. Because I did Pikmin 3, I did not do that much of that stuff. I mentioned it. Obviously, it wasn't that convenient to play relative to this is being so sort of well suited to a portable game. So that's a lot of it. But definitely putting it more front and center, I think, is a major part of it as well. So I think that's they didn't have to do it from the point of view of we've got to pad the game out or anything. I don't think it was that. I think
I've been playing for over 40 hours.
No, there's plenty of it. I think it's just we believe in the merit of this element of Pikmin that's not just, doing the mainline campaign, and we want to we think it's been kind of underappreciated or just flat out underplayed, and we think this is going to remedy that.
I'll be honest, I've not really been enjoying the Dandori battles when they pop up.
Yeah, it's not my favorite either.
The regular Dandori challenges I'm fine with. I prefer the base gameplay content, but the Dandori battles, even things as mundane as the screen layout sucks. So,
I expressed incredulity at the time about were they really going to do split screen on single player stuff? But they sure did it, and it's an interesting choice. I at first I was still just as baffled as on the Nintendo Direct video. But it kind of made a little bit more sense as it went on. I was like, okay, we've got these items, so maybe you want to see what they're doing before you actually use a particular item. But still, it's just again, that reinforced for me the feeling of this is not so much about the sake of it being single player content. This is about advertising the fact that wouldn't this be more fun if it had to be split screen, because you'd be playing it with a friend, and you can just go to the back out of the menu and go and pick Dandori battles.
Yeah, I just found that was kind of an annoyance, but also the stuff going on, I never found the Dandori battles to be particularly challenging. And it feels like there's just more is more going on in some of those, where it's okay, now we've introduced the stealth bomb, which I know you noted last week. It's not particularly stealthy. In fact, I think there's a drum beat sound as it moves, so it's
it's curious now. I wonder if that's a weird localization.
Yeah, something got translated weird.
It kind of means that in Japanese, but maybe there's a double meaning or a pun or something that just doesn't come across. I don't know.
It's so weird, but it's either too disruptive to the thing, or not disruptive enough, because the AI doesn't seem to even acknowledge the thing exists for the most part.
Yeah.
And when it blows up, considering how much you have to invest your Pikmin in getting it there, I kind of wish it did more damage. But also, because the AI is not fighting to use it, it kind of does too much damage. It's really weird. It feels... Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, it kind of... you can get away with just using Ochi, basically, to get the bomb to their base, and then get the biggest weight that you can... that popped out of the base back to your base. And I guess that the AI is just not really there. It kind of, you can kind of get away win most of those battles just doing your own thing for the most part. So that kind of defeats the purpose of trying out these.
Again, it just kind of feels like it's hey, wouldn't this be more fun with an actual person?
Yeah.
That seems to be the. So,
but at the same time, I can see it becoming annoying if you are trying to platinum those battles. It's a lot of it is based on luck and what happens, what the AI decides to do or to ignore.
In that case, you have to win by a certain margin, right? It's a points margin that determines what medal you get.
I was playing a mission today, and I'm not going to say who it was. The person controlling Moss just kept running Moss into one of those stomper robots. Speaking of back to my this is actually Mira theory, there are mechanized units here. But it's like a giant four-legged spider robot that stomps around.
Right.
The AI just kept running moss under its feet. And it just
the dog
kept
can't do anything.
Moss.
Yeah, the dog can't do anything against it, basically.
Moss got KO'd like twice, and I'm like, okay, well, I'm like, okay, now I'm just destroying you because you don't have moss. There's literally no one to control your Pikmin. This is stupid. And it's just like, why? I came around and saw moss just being fed to this thing, and I'm like, what the fuck? All right, I mean, you do you, I guess. I just completely ignored it. I was like, yeah, I guess we're just not going to go over there. Over there is bad. Where that thing is no good. We're going to stay over here where everything is fine. And then moss comes back out. I'm like, okay, now, nope, going right back to it. All right, well, at least you tried. I was like, this is very stupid.
I will say that I did the challenges in Pikmin 3, and I really enjoyed them. And they had this thing where it showed you basically the bell curve of the people, how well they did, like their scores. I remember
this, yeah.
Yeah. And you don't get that here, and I miss it. It's weird because not that Pikmin 3 had amazing online, features, but it feels even more lonely in Pikmin 4. Like there's you get nothing.
The bell curve very much feels like a feature that would have evolved out of the stuff they used to get from the Nintendo. I can't remember what they called their social media platform.
The Miiverse.
Miiverse, yeah. It feels very much like a Miiverse thing.
It's just something they did all the way back, I remember, on Mario Kart Wii, I think. There's just like, okay, we do time trials. You get to contextualize how good, it's like, okay, well, you beat your own record, a few times or whatever. Maybe there's like a staff ghost or whatever, but, that all goes so far. But, like actually be able to say, okay, no, this is like, I have moved up, this many percentiles as a result of, how much better my time's got. It just adds some sort of context to it that makes it more likely that you would try it on other tracks, or, maybe keep working on that track. And you can kind of also see sometimes some kind of interesting kind of kinks in the curve where it's like, okay, the distribution, like there's a kind of spike at this particular point, which suggests there's a method here that certain people have used that, kind of means that you've almost got like a distribution within the distribution at the top end where people have found something that works for them. It was interesting.
Then getting over that is like exponentially harder.
Yeah.
Yes.
So after that, it's like, okay, now we're into like the top tier kind of stuff that's probably certainly would be beyond my skill a lot of the time. So just a little bit of context with stuff like that is could go a long way to like making it more like long term kind of appealing. But in this case, I guess you've just got the medals, and then past platinum. Yeah, what would they be? I guess to keep you kind of coming back.
Yeah, but I've been enjoying it. The challenges I just enjoy immensely. I guess it's the same thing that appeals to me about a game like Overcooked. Just find the one most efficient way, the dendoriest way of gathering stuff and then like executing it. And I don't know. It gives me tons of endorphins. I guess it feels great.
I found also that the night expeditions aren't particularly challenging.
No, and I guess that's something, like, if you haven't been playing Pikmin 4, you might have thought from the trailers or the, like the marketing, like, oh, now you can stay up at night and face these things. No, like, it's a whole separate mission kind of thing.
Yeah.
You select them in a menu, basically. And so you go do this thing, and it's like completely segregated off the main game.
It is a bit like some of those other things in terms of it's like this is almost just a separate mode that they've found a way to kind of fold it into the main campaign, even if it is still pretty damn siloed. It is at least somewhat integrated into the main campaign, because presumably again they just kind of felt like, oh well, this would, if we did put it as a separate mode, like just like the kind of Pikmin based defense mode, that it is, people might just ignore it. So if we kind of force them to play it a little bit,
right,
then it won't go to waste, as it were. But it's kind of interesting because it kind of, the notion that this is sort of getting a little bit closer to a more orthodox character action scenario, like, is even more so in the nighttime sort of defense missions, because the Pikmin are more like ammo, the glow Pikmin, because they're kind of spectral, you know, like you the way you can like charge them up and like shoot them as a giant glowing ball, and that then like they just attack really the sort of hard, and the way that they can kind of teleport essentially when you switch,
when your gun recharges.
When you switch between the two characters, you know, between Ochi and your astronaut guy, like that, then they just arrive with you. You know, you don't have to worry about splitting them up among, you know, your two playable characters. They just show up because they're spirits. They can, I guess, you know. So it does become more of a sort of quick fire kind of scenario there. So it's a kind of interesting little spin on the concept and making it more kind of actiony. But it's not terribly substantial, and it's definitely not that much integrated really into the game.
I think that's the big thing, is it just doesn't feel integrated. Thematically or from a gameplay standpoint. But yeah, I don't know. I definitely found that some of these late game Dandori battles, they're not hard still. And the night missions, they're not hard necessarily. They're just kind of annoying, especially on ones in the Dandori and night missions. This is less important, but these challenge areas where there's something that's going to knock out a whole bunch of your Pikmin, so you just are going to have to restart it because bad luck. That can make some of these early stages feel like they take forever, and this game already has dungeons that feel just so long. That I'm not sure I want them to feel longer. This last one I'm in, I feel like I've been in it for an hour already.
But that is kind of a special case. But
it is.
It's a weird mix, the caves. The caves are a weird mix of like some really quite small, contained little like puzzly kind of challenges. And then I don't know whether it's maybe one per area or something. There's one that's more of a like gauntlet, you know, that's got like a bunch of floors, and you know, might be more about combat, and you'll have, they say you never really get the set piece boss encounters, you know, to the same extent that you do in Pikmin 3, as I mentioned last week, but you know, it is more about combat. You will face some more of those kind of actually really threatening enemies that could, like, you know, cause a big wipeout of a whole bunch of your Pikmin and stuff. So yeah, and what the one you're talking about is obviously it's the culmination of those, you know, so it really kind of goes a bit. But yeah, they're kind of, you know, in the minority of the caves, but it's almost like a slightly separate you know, it's like they're caves, but they're quite different. They're quite separate from some of the other ones.
Yeah, I don't know, Guillaume, did you have anything else you wanted to talk about in the Pikmin 4 space?
No, I just, nothing that I haven't said already. Like, it's very different from 3. I love it. I still love 3. So it's like, you know, get both. They're both on Switch. That's great.
What about you, Greg?
No, very much similar thing in terms of, you know, it maintains its own kind of flavour. It kind of feels like, you know, doing Pikmin 2 right, essentially, and it's just a great handheld Pikmin game. You know what I mean? Like, if you're somebody that, like me, that does most of your gaming on Switch portably, and maybe you've wondered about, you know, with like Pikmin 3 or even like these re-releases of Pikmin 1 and 2 that just came out, do they really suit portable play? I can't say, because I've not played those on Switch, but this really, really does. So this would be the one to start with, and then maybe work your way back to some of the others if it really kind of lands with you.
Since I was stuck in bed, I played a lot of it handheld. Using the grip that I've got that gives it nice handles. I would burn the battery down. I had a charger there, so maybe I would play it for 3 or 4 hours and then take another nap. I got a lot of stuff done on the thing and didn't feel like there was any issues playing it that way. It's, you know, I said earlier, my only real issue with this game is not impacted by the mode. It's just hellacious loading.
Yeah, it takes a bit of time, but generally speaking, because this is this was Unreal, right? Like as a they actually use that for the graphics engine powering the game. And one of the only other sort of first party published things that used that was Yoshi's Crafted World. Quite a few years ago now. And, obviously it was still perfectly fine, especially for something that's a relatively gentle game. But, in portable mode, that was quite low res. So, I did feel like that was something that's just like, okay, well, they can't afford to sacrifice as much on resolution with Pikmin because, by its very nature, even with the whole thing of moving, kind of the default view closer to the ground, closer to the action, you want the resolution is going to be very much needed to appreciate the action properly and ultimately to play the game better portably. But I don't know what the pixel count is, but it's good enough. The game works very well as a portable game.
Cool. I've been playing it a lot with things like baseball on, just because you can't take your eyes off it very much, but you can also give it half attention. It's probably the best way of putting it. Like, you can't really just not look at the screen, but you can maybe only half process it mentally. Cool. All right, we'll move on from the Pikmins to John.
Yeah, so I
Welcome
finished.
Back.
Yeah, it's good to be back. I finished Final Fantasy XVI.
Hey!
So it took me about maybe 60-ish hours, and that's doing all of the side quests. Pretty much, if you do all of the side quests and all of the kind of monster quests that you have in there, there's 32 monsters that you can hunt down. And really what completing all those two things allow you to do is to craft all the best weapons in the game and the best armor in the game. Not that and what that means is a sword, like wrist pieces and waist. So, I mean, you only have 3 pieces of armor in the game. So, so did all that, and so I got to the point after I had all that completed. Really, the only thing I had to do was just go to the last area and beat the boss. That in and of itself took about 2 hours to do because, I wouldn't say this is really too much of a spoiler, but in true Final Fantasy fashion, it's like, no boss has one phase, right? You're going through phase after phase after phase, but it's all pretty spectacular. All the boss fights are pretty spectacular. I didn't think the end boss fight was as spectacular as some in the middle. There's a couple of boss fights probably around the middle of the game that are really, really incredible. I would say overall with this game, I like it. I like it. But at the same time, I feel like it's, I would describe it as junk food because it looks really good. It's fun to play. But deep down, there's not a lot of substance to it. It's you can obviously make it more difficult if you want, and of course, once you beat the game, it opens up New Game Plus, which allows you to. I think the level cap in the normal game is 50, and this raises the level cap to 100, and so you can, so some of the monsters, for example, that you need to hunt down, when you play them in the normal game, I think they're maybe level 48. But then you play them in the New Game Plus and they're like level 98 or something like that, right? So it just amps up the difficulty for everything. And so if you want to platinum the game, that's what you need to do, is you need to beat it on New Game Plus as well. But yeah, I would classify it as junk food just from the standpoint of, you play through it and, everything looks good. The characters are cool. Game looks fantastic. I think the story is pretty good, but if you want a lot of depth, this probably isn't the Final Fantasy for you. If you're looking for something with a whole lot of systems, this is not that. Now, on the one hand, that's nice because I find a lot of RPGs, they just give you systems on systems on systems on systems to pad the game time out. Where I think of stuff like in speaking of Xenoblade games, all of the affinity stuff I always just found kind of superfluous and really just there to bait you into playing the game probably longer than you would normally need to complete all that stuff. And, Xenoblade X had all kinds of systems. I haven't played that game in so long I can't remember. But I just remember there are certain things in there. There are certain very, very in-depth systems in Xenoblade X where it's just like, I'm not touching this stuff. I'm going to beat the game and I'm not touching this kind of stuff. So, Final Fantasy XVI is definitely not that. But I think it's worth a playthrough if you just want to be entertained. That's what I'll say.
It's like a popcorn movie, but a video game.
It is. I would say. And I think if you're an old school Final Fantasy fan, you will be like, what is this? Because it's funny, in the credits, they list Platinum Games as one of the contributors.
Sure.
And that does not surprise me at all, just because based on the combat system, which is very, very button mashy, quick time. I think the game feels like, and this is being very reductive, however, I think it rings true to a certain degree where the entire game feels like about a 60-hour QuickTime event.
Oh, God.
Where you're just constantly mashing buttons. And now, of course, bear in mind, I'm using the ring that basically turns every battle into a QuickTime event, kind of, by allowing you to dodge, bringing up the kind of timer window that allows you to dodge every single attack. But there's quite a bit of that. You take that ring away, number one, the game becomes a lot more difficult. And number two, you're dodging everything manually and you just never see anything. There's no interruption. There's no interruption to the battle flow. So, but that being said too, a lot of the boss battles, they're very QuickTime event oriented. So yeah, I like it. But I wouldn't recommend it to everybody if I was reviewing it. I'd probably give it an 8 out of 10. It's one of those kinds of games where I think it's good. I wouldn't unreservedly recommend it to everyone. But I enjoyed my time with it. It's the first Final Fantasy mainline game that I've played through since Final Fantasy VII back in 1997. So that says something. It says something, and I think really what it says is the fact that I was able to play through it easily without devoting 150 hours of my time to it.
Well, that's fair. Like, if you were to see this percentage of completion on a more traditional RPG-based Final Fantasy, it would take a lot longer.
It would. Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
Anything else?
Well, I did just watch the Super Mario Brothers movie. So, yeah. Came out on the cock.
Yeah.
Peacock, much hyped that it was going to be releasing on August 3rd on the cock. And, it's interesting. I didn't think it was bad. I have to say, I have to preface my comments by saying that, these kind of Pixar, animated sort of things, this is, of course, not done by Pixar. It's done by a different company. But these types of films are really not my bag. I don't love them. But I wanted to see what all the hype was about. And it's not bad. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, that's accurate.
Yeah.
It's not bad.
I will say that it felt like egregious fan service to a degree, almost like they were trying to check boxes. Like, well,
they were.
Absolutely. But it kind of, to me, it was a little bit of a distraction. It's, instead of trying to tell the story, I felt like the story was, and of course there's going to be a sequel. And I have a feeling this might be a case. Yeah, I have a feeling this might be a case where the sequel actually tells a better story because they're not trying to get they're not trying to cram all of the Mario stuff into it.
Right.
But this one is very much like, oh yeah, we have to cram in the Mario Kart stuff. We have to cram in Rainbow Road. We have to have a Blue Shell reference. It just goes all the way through all of those kind of things where you're like, okay, all right, well, just kind of, this movie feels like they're just getting all of that stuff out of the way. Almost to the point where the story becomes secondary because they're just trying to fan service all of these different elements of the Mario universe. And, there's a lot of like, oh, well, we have to go somewhere. So okay, cue a montage of them walking through all of these different Mario environments just to get them in there.
Oftentimes with like weird musical choices to go with them.
Very strange musical choices, like Thunderstruck, Electric Light Orchestra, Beastie Boys, No Sleep Till Brooklyn, Take On Me by Aha. And I'm like,
oh my God.
And I'm like, really? This is in a Mario movie?
We get it. The person who picked the music for this is 62 years old.
Right,
we get it.
Exactly. It's like, and you know, yeah, we get it. Like, you know, we get that you're also going for, you know, the 40 to 50-year-old fans of the first game. We understand it. But there's just a lot of stuff like that where I'm just kind of, you know, I roll my eyes a little bit because it's like, it just feels like pandering to a certain degree. But it was good. I mean, I really wasn't distracted too much by the voice cast. Everybody did a good job. I mean, Chris Pratt is, like,
he didn't do a good job. He did at best a passable job.
It was passable. Right, exactly. I mean, I don't know.
Jack Black was fine except for that god-awful musical number.
That I was just like, okay, this is just dumb. The fact that they have Bowser sitting there playing the piano, I'm like, okay, like, was this some sort of contractual thing from Jack Black where he had to do some stupid over-the-top musical number?
I said it in the episode we had Johnny on, but I legitimately believe he is signed on to the movie in part because he wanted a songwriting credit on it. Mm-hmm. Because that means he gets double or he gets additional annuities in the movie. Mm-hmm. Like, no, I want to have a songwriting credit. And sure enough, that's how he's listed.
Yeah. So, again, I kind of rolled my eyes at that. But, you know, I'll probably... I kind of watched the first part of it where he's sort of, you know, he gets sucked into the Mushroom Kingdom, which I thought really there wasn't really much premise there for him even getting sucked into the Mushroom Kingdom.
No, he just was.
It's like he finds a pipe and falls into it, and all of a sudden he's in the Mushroom Kingdom, and then he has to go training and all this kind of stuff. And then
he becomes the Super Mario.
Yes, indeed he does. Yeah,
oh, good.
Nobody's ever gone through that pipe before. It's just there.
Yeah, somehow it got built, you know, underneath the streets of Brooklyn, and it was walled off and never used apparently by anybody. So yeah, go figure. But of course, yeah, you know, they tease a sequel.
Oh yeah,
and
about 5 spin-offs.
Yeah. Thankfully, the one thing it's only an hour and a half long, so
it is very short.
Yeah, it doesn't overstay its welcome. You know, it kind of tells its story and moves on about its business, and you know, nobody gets killed off. Not that I would expect anybody to get killed off, really, but you know what I mean. They leave it wide open for, you know, characters to come back, or like this person, like you just know, like the sequel is going to be like, oh well. You know, Bowser escapes and he's off causing trouble again, and you know, that kind of stuff. So, but it's good. I'm glad they actually. I mean, it's well done. Like the animation is really good. It looks great. It is cool. I have to say, it is cool seeing those environments brought to life like that in like a full blown out 3D way. It's really, really cool. And I'm actually curious. I was watching it and I was wondering how that movie will influence the games going forward, because they kind of do tease it like, oh, there's a whole galaxy of Mario universes out there, right? So I'm just curious how they'll tie it in, or any of the looks of the movie, how they'll bring that into the mainline games.
Mario Wonder would have been a good place to do it, since they are changing up the art style, but it doesn't appear to be changing up the art style to move it in that direction. Honestly, it seems to be, I mean, it's a pretty conservative move in general, but it's definitely not in the direction of how Mario and Luigi look in the movie, which is based around being able to convert them into a toy. Mm-hmm. And there are plenty of those out there now that are based on the movie Mario and Luigi, and they look quite different, especially if you're at like Target and they've got regular Mario merch and Mario movie merch side by side, and you're like, wait, what? These are the same guy? No.
Yeah, the Mario movie merch, it looks more Pixar-y, if I could. Just way it's...
How its face is rigged in and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a little weird.
Mm-hmm. I did enjoy sort of the kind of little nods to, other games. Like at the very end, he's sitting beside an arcade cabinet that says Jumpman on it.
Yes.
There's a lot of cool little things like that, little musical cues that, maybe not everybody would pick up, but if you're a longtime Nintendo fan, like, you'll definitely know it. All the themes are in there. All that kind of stuff is in there. So, I kind of looked at it like, all right, guys, okay, get all the obvious references out of the way, and let's just move on to the second movie so you can probably tell the story without having to worry about, hitting all of the high points. So.
The only other thing I think that they might have botched is the characterization of the DK crew is kind of screwed up.
Mm-hmm.
Like, Seth Rogen's is probably fine, but
yeah, it's
but Cranky's is fucking terrible.
I didn't like Cranky Kong. I also thought the whole oh yeah, Bowser just wants to marry Princess Peach. Like, that whole thing, it's like, it's not like a 1940s Bugs Bunny cartoon anymore. Like, it just felt a little bit, I don't know, a little bit tone deaf. It was a bit weird.
That is the premise of Odyssey, too.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is.
But Odyssey, it's handled in like a more cartoony way. Yeah. I don't know how to describe it. It did feel a little weird. It
just feels a little weird.
Yeah. I don't know. But also the need to put geopolitics into, well, like, no, this is the apparently all the penguins had their own, like, state, and this is the state that like, nation state. It's like, that really probably wasn't necessary. I didn't need, I didn't need to understand that the Mushroom Kingdom has borders. I just sort of implicitly assumed the sun never set on the Mushroom Kingdom, and that it is what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. The idea that DK is a king is not sitting well with me.
Right.
I know he rules the island, but whatever.
And because there's the Mushroom Kingdom and then the Jungle Kingdom. Right. And I kind of feel like, was that just done so that you could make a theme park out of it?
It sounds like when somebody is describing levels in the Mario Kart DLC, but doesn't remember their names. Well, there's the Mushroom Kingdom one. There's one that was set in a jungle. Would you really name the kingdom? I guess they went with it because it's called the Mushroom Kingdom, and then, well, this must be the Jungle Kingdom then.
Yeah.
But I may as well have just called it the fucking Tree Kingdom. It's full of trees. What do we call it? The Tree Kingdom.
Yeah. Oh, now we're going to the Ice Kingdom where the penguins are. It's like, what? Or, okay.
Yeah, I don't know. It's weird. We probably put more thought into this than they did.
Probably. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's hard.
We never do that.
Exactly. But it is hard when, like, you've played so many Nintendo games, so many Mario games, and you can't help but kind of pick it apart. Like, it's almost like you're looking at it with a fine-tooth comb. Like, you can't put anything past me, Super Mario Brothers movie. Yeah. I know what you're referring to when you say that.
I do feel like they gave away too much, putting that much DK in there and that much Mario Kart content in there. Like, they've really sort of wasted a bunch of content they could have put in a movie. But then again, I don't know what they would have done to stretch out to 90 minutes. I mean, even at 90 minutes, it was like, we're going to have an extended post sequence where they're walking around New York celebrating.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, it got to its number and got the fuck out, basically.
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, overall, I mean, I thought it was enjoyable. I'll be interested to see what they do for the sequel. Hopefully the sequel is a bit more, I hope it has a better story. Because this one was just a little, I don't know, a little bit perfunctory. Like, it was just very
this one had scenes.
Yeah.
It didn't really have much of an overarching story besides Bowser bad.
Mm-hmm. Pretty much.
That was pretty much it.
Yeah.
Also, I didn't need a Mario origin story. Like, I think that's part of it. Like, I just didn't need that.
Yeah. There's like that, or that first part of the movie, I kind of phased out a little bit. I came back to it once they actually got into the Mushroom Kingdom, and really started, like, once they kind of met Toad, and like when Princess and Toad and Mario kind of go off and start doing their thing and start traveling. That's kind of when I came back in and watched it. But yeah, like the whole you know, I did like the fact that they had a nod to the Super Show. That was pretty funny.
Yep.
But yeah,
I didn't need a training montage.
No, I didn't need that either. I pretty much skipped that.
Yeah.
So
didn't need an extended sequence about how they kind of are shit at plumbing.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't need the weird sequence with the dog.
Nope. Yeah, that was sort of like, okay, this is just silly.
This is just, we have to get to 94 minutes.
Yeah, and this was like, yeah, I felt the same way. Like at the start of the movie, I was like, all right, so here we go. This is the silly kind of cringy humor that I'm usually, that I'm used to from these types of movies. And it's just like, okay, all right. It's like, here's this setup. They're terrible plumbers. Hijinks ensue to prove that they're terrible plumbers. And here we are. Can we actually get to the story? It's like, there was just kind of like, so.
Yeah. Cool.
But yeah, not bad. Not bad, not great, is how I would review it.
Yeah. That's, I mean, compared to where we were when they're like, it's going to come from the people who made Minions, we're like, oh, this is going to be the worst fucking movie in the world.
Yeah.
So, it's something.
It is.
Greg, do you have anything you want to talk about?
I wouldn't say so, no. I mean, lots of Pikmin, just put loads of time into that. Very happy with how it turned out. The only thing I kind of got around to that, I'd been meaning to, but haven't actually been able to put that much time in yet, is Theatrhythm for Switch. The final bar line, I think is how they refer to it. So yeah, that'll be something I'll be looking forward to, playing. Probably here and there, always kind of tend to sort of space it out, don't try and hit it too hard kind of thing. But, I had to get used to actually doing like the analog stick inputs for the kind of field stages where you have those kind of, in the 3DS games, first game you had to use the stylus to kind of trace your path to match the sort of prompt. And then I believe it was optional in the second, curtain call, but because I'd got used to playing it that way, I kept playing it that way. Now on Switch, of course, it's just nice. You only use the stick. So yeah, it's taking a little bit to get used to, but it should be fine. And, eventually, I've got so much, there's so much in it already that eventually I'll surely get some of the DLC because you've got Chrono stuff, you've got Octopath stuff, you've got Bravely Default stuff is, I think, close at hand. And I've got to think, like 16, right? Like they're going to do 16 DLC for this.
Yeah, I got the
I
got it on PS5, and so I got the Super Duper Deluxe Edition with the Season Pass and all that junk.
Right.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff in there, but I think you're absolutely right, Greg. I was thinking the same thing. I was like, why are they're throwing like Chrono Trigger stuff out there, Octopath? I'm like, why are you not releasing Final Fantasy XVI tracks here? That doesn't make any sense to me.
I don't know, maybe they genuinely fear that some people only play it for the soundtrack and they don't want to give it away.
I guess.
Yeah.
But, I mean, I have to, there's very, very little chance that I'll be getting a PS5 for Final Fantasy XVI anytime soon. So there is a part that's like, no, but I would quite like to play, to experience some of the songs in some sort of context here.
Yeah, I think it's actually on Spotify. The Final Fantasy XVI soundtrack is on Spotify.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah,
so
I think
really
it is.
Did make it more curious to me.
I am pretty sure I can check.
One of the earlier things I've checked out is the 7 remake songs. Which, as you might imagine, it's just a lot of stuff that would be familiar to you if you know the 7 soundtrack from its original incarnation, but just with much more rich, bombastic, kind of orchestral arrangements. And, it's, I like what I've heard so far because the instrumentation of the original Final Fantasy VII is like really similar to Super Nintendo instrumentation, but strangely worse, at least to my ears. Which is just kind of bizarre. Like, it's the whole thing was there's a CD, kind of system and all this. I'm sure, people probably expected better sound or whatever, but I just think it's, they kind of went with something that was, being like sort of true to their process on the Super Nintendo games, but like it just doesn't quite sound right. I think a lot of that's just because of how, kind of entrenched in Super Nintendo sound I was, but it kind of sounds a bit colder, bit more shrill, So but the songs were great. Like the compositions were really good. So I do, and obviously with all the various spin-offs and things over the years, it's hardly the first time that some of these songs have been rearranged, but I do enjoy getting a bit of a glimpse at that, and that'll be more of the, probably some of the first things that I kind of complete. It kind of encourages you to like sample a game's like first few songs, and then if you beat them, you get a key, and you can unlock a different game's like songs. So that's kind of you have to do all of them to then go on to a different one or do them in sequence or whatever. So yeah, I'd imagine that would be something I'll probably be just playing a little bit of here and there for quite some time to come.
Yeah, the 16 soundtrack, it's not on Spotify officially, because Square Enix Music, they do have an official Spotify presence on there. So they have like Stranger of Paradise. They have Final Fantasy VII Remake is on there. Final Fantasy 15 is on there. So they're there. Brave Exvius, if you want to, check that out.
Good.
Yeah.
I'm good.
Yep.
Cool. Guillaume, anything you want to touch on?
Yeah, no, it's been all Pikmin all the time.
Okay.
Yep.
Cool. All right.
Maybe next week.
Maybe. All right. Well, on that, we're going to take a break. And when we come back, we're going to do a little bit of your email. So stay here. We're back. Emails. Send them. rfn@nintendoworldreport.com. That's rfn@nintendoworldreport.com. You type your thoughts into a form or into your email client of choice. You put rfn@nintendoworldreport.com in the to field. You tell us who you are and you hit send. In 3 to 5 months, you might hear your email read live on this show. By live, I mean recorded. So, not live. I mean, we were alive when we read it. I'll go with that. I'll read the first email. It's from Christian, who writes, "Hi guys. Just to fill your mailbag, I have 2 questions. We're only going to do one of these. Nintendo President Furukawa recently stated the Switch successor will use the same account system as Switch, smoothing the transition between the two systems. While some outlets are reporting his comments with the appropriate caution, I've heard some wild overinterpretation that suggests that this means consumers' digital Switch library will be available on the new system. While I think that whether this is true or not, and how it would be implemented, remains to be seen, it does tie into a growing concern I have about my Switch library. I have a huge Switch backlog, and I would love to add many games of the current collection of games, Etrian Odyssey, Fantasy, to it. But with the Switch successor on the horizon, I don't know if I should wait for the inevitable ports to that system, or if I should buy them now and hope that the new successor is backwards compatible. Just for clarification, I know myself pretty well, and if a new system is in the house, I am not very likely to pick up the old system again, particularly as my Switch and controllers are starting to age. I know the physical versus digital debate is age old and does not need to be rehashed, but this is a slight wrinkle. Do you think there is a possibility that the Switch successor will be backwards compatible for the digital library, but not physical? Although I primarily buy physical games, if available, should I be buying digital to better future-proof my library? Additionally, for those in the group that are primarily or substantially digital already, what is your strategy for managing your games? Do you have multiple SD cards? And if so, how does that work out for you? Do you just leave the games you are done with on the eShop to re-download later? And if so, are you concerned about the Switch eShop eventually shutting down? And what would you do with them? I know there are a lot of questions here, so feel free to answer any at all or none. Thank you. Ooh. I mean, yeah. I guess I'll start with the end here. I am pretty much exclusively digital on Switch, and I thin the herd periodically. I have a very large SD card, if the games in them need to be removed because I'm not playing them anymore and I need to make space, I do that. And if Nintendo is going to shut the eShop down, I'm going to get a lot of warning. They've been pretty good about that. And my thought is I'll figure it out if and when the time comes.
Mm-hmm.
What about the rest of y'all that are digital?
Yeah, I mean, when the 3DS shop went down, I kind of went apeshit and bought a bunch of games. pretty much.
Yeah, me too. And I made so many kind of gold coins buying 3DS stuff that, and I didn't realize it. I didn't know that you got gold coins to use on the Switch when you were buying 3DS games. And so, like, for a while, I had like a bunch of smaller, indie games on sale on the Switch that they were free basically, because I spent so much freaking money on the 3DS on its last few days. But like to me, first of all, like on the Wii U, I kind of went all digital most of the time, and I regretted it. Like I don't think it's the way to future-proof your purchases in the absence of evidence that it will actually transfer to the next system.
Right.
Like, and like at the very least, if you buy physical, you can then sell those for some money that you can then, use that money to repurchase the games if you want to. But I guess one of my questions would be, do you want to add to your collection, given that you say that you have a huge Switch backlog? Like, it might be, I don't know, like, I get the idea that I want to add, like, Final Fantasy and Etrian Odyssey to my collection, but then, like, what are those games doing on your system, or, like, what are they doing for you if you don't get around to play them? And you probably won't get around to play them, because Etrian Odyssey, each game is, like, 60 hours of, like, you're just doing that, like, for 60 hours, and then Final Fantasy, they're not small either. Like, most of them are between like 20 and 40 hours. And
they get larger the further you go up, right? So
right.
Yeah.
Realistic terms, yes, it took me 60 something hours to get through Final Fantasy XVI, but in like actual real life time, it took me like a month.
Right.
Right. Like, there's never going to be a vacation long enough. There's never going to be, like, you're not going to get around to them. So why buy them on the Switch right now, knowing you can't get around to playing them on the Switch right now, and knowing that the Switch will be replaced by something that you're going to be more likely to pick up later? Like, I would just wait for the magical, moment where something comes out on the system that you're currently playing, and that it comes out when you actually have the time and the inclination to play it right away. Like,
and the reality of the situation is, if like there's no risk in waiting to buy stuff, because
right.
If it is backwards compatible, the shop's gonna have that stuff in it, obviously. Like, that would be the reason for them to make it backwards compatible, to make these things available for purchase for people who already own them.
Mm-hmm.
Or rather, people who didn't already own them. If it's not backwards compatible, they're not gonna, like, announce one day, and the next system is not backwards compatible, and then shut the eShop down. And put up a sign that says "suckers" afterwards. Like, you can make your purchasing decisions fully informed, especially, like, as Guillaume noted, you say you've got a huge backlog. Like, just don't right now. Like, if your backlog is that big, man, there is no net positive for you buying those games right now. They're just going to sit there. As we've joked in the past on this show, leverage the power of compounding interest. Hold on to your money. Buy them when it's time, whatever that is. And if it's never time, cool. That's great.
Yeah, you just save some money.
Yeah.
And, like, my 3DS shopping spree, like, like, Capcom, they knew what they were doing. In hindsight, like, I should have seen it coming. But, like, they were putting all their Ace Attorney games on sale on those last few days. And then, like, within, a month? maybe 2 months at most, they went and announced that the Apollo Justice game, or, all the, basically, most of the Phoenix Wright games that had not been ported to outside of the DS and 3DS were being ported to Switch. It's like, you fuckers. You knew.
The missing 3.
Right.
Yep.
So, yeah, there's no, there's no harm in waiting until they say that they're going to pull the plug on the buying Switch games.
Right. But that's not happening anytime soon.
Right.
I mean, we talked about it earlier in the episode. They had, this was driven largely by Tears of the Kingdom, but half of the sales were back catalog games last quarter for their most successful first quarter in terms of sell-through yet in year 7. So they want to leave that sell-through requires the eShop stay online. So they have every financial incentive to keep the eShop up for at least a while. The others,
and with the other experiences, obviously there's a lot of things that are not great about it, but they did definitely provide ample warning like that.
Oh, yeah.
We've been through it a few times now with Wii Shop Channel, the DSi specific
over a
shop,
year.
And then, with the 3DS and Wii U eShops, it's, that usually there was like kind of multiple phases to it in terms of like, this is how long it'll be until like you could kind of stop adding money. And then this is how long it'll be after that to like spend the money and stuff. So at least if nothing else, it's been, pretty, heavily telegraphed and to give everybody as ample time to kind of get their affairs in order, as it were. So I can imagine it being certainly a similar situation here. And obviously, I think they will have to kind of take it. Not that necessarily it was entirely frivolous, their attitude before, but they boast of how they're increasing the percentage of sales that are digital. Naturally, right. Because when they say that to their shareholders, like, we get all of that, so, that's good news for them, of course. So that's why they brag about it. But that also means that it's like, okay, every decision you make with regard to, those things, those shops or, the ownership of those games for people and the accounts, that are linked to them and everything is more consequential than it's ever been. And so, they are probably, if anything, going to have to take put a higher priority than they have done in the past on how they manage these things.
Agreed. There's maybe one thing where they give you less of a warning. I thought that when they discontinued the 3DS, it was kind of abrupt. Like I was kind of caught off guard because I kind of wanted to get a new 2DS at some point. And then they stopped producing them, and already they were out of
you mean the
stock.
hardware?
The actual manufacture of the hardware itself. Yeah, that was, kind of a little bit quick. I think it just relative to everything else, wasn't it? Because, as we said, the eShop, there was a great deal of lead time on that. But also just the fact that, they had been still releasing 3DS games, like a few years into the Switch's life.
Yeah,
and so it felt really sudden from like we've still got like this Mario and Luigi remake that's coming out to we have stopped production of this thing, like that. But the sort of rising success of Switch, I think, kind of contributed to a harder sort of switch off there than perhaps they had necessarily planned for. And I think so. In that sense, I think it really was quite abrupt.
Right. And at this point, I'm kind of eyeing an OLED model, but of course, I'm waiting to see what the successor looks like, if it's backwards compatible before I make a move. But I'm not, there's no danger of me being, of shops being sold out of the OLED at any point. Like they sold 2.83 million OLED models in the last quarter. If anything, the standard model might go away. Like that's way less.
I get another one of the sort of talking points. I think in the earnings report was that I think it was the highest percentage of OLED models ever. Of the hardware sold in this quarter.
And OLEDs are what I'm seeing in stores, so that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So I to your question, Guillaume, a year ago, I would have said absolutely, because I was quite confident you would have gotten at least a year out of it, it being the lead system.
Yeah.
Like, I would say the earliest you could see a successor is March next year. Even I feel like that, given the fact that we're not talking about it yet, is probably would be really aggressive. So that's really just a question of you. I can guarantee you 6 months of it being your lead system. Is that worth it to you? Like, I think it is a dramatic improvement.
Yeah, I guess it's interesting in terms of some of the kind of reports or rumours that are flying around at the minute of like maybe the second half of the next year and maybe it not beginning life with an OLED screen.
I don't know. Nobody knows anything.
No, I'm not. So I can't.
Everybody's been wrong all the time.
Yeah,
so
exactly. You got to take all of this with the appropriate amount of salt, or however you want to phrase these things. But
the fucking Red Sea.
I do want to say I probably shouldn't take it absolutely for granted that it would have one. I think that is fair to say.
I guess, yeah, but like, so there was some report of all the devices, but the devices that they have in these dev kits don't have them. But again, that may be true and then still just be dev kits.
Dev kit. Well, as we know, the mismatch between kind of dev kits and what the thing actually is something that has produced some fun outcomes over the years, like Castlevania on GBA being impossible to see.
Right.
Because they didn't realise what that actually was going to look like on real hardware. And, that ended up being a problem. So, yeah, I mean, it is, a distinction to remember. But yeah, the precise timing, the nature of the device, it's all up in the air. Just as you said, we know, being as advanced in age as the Switch is, you do feel like it probably can't be that far away, But I agree with you that it would kind of be pretty unthinkable for it to be any earlier than the very end of this current fiscal year. Right. For some reason they really wanted to just get a bit of a boost at the end of this fiscal year. They could do it, at that time in March, which was, of course, when they did it with the Switch originally back in 2017. But of course the circumstances were so different. The circumstances were going, we need this stuff to start boosting our yearly results as fast as possible, because the 3DS is petering out pretty severely. The Wii U never got going. It's all very moribund. Whereas, obviously there's no doubt you're in a kind of late stage here with Switch, but it's a pretty productive one, as we've covered. So
and they have basically told their investors they're not releasing a new console this fiscal year, which is not. And I want to be clear: you don't lie to you can be wrong, but you don't lie. You're very rarely wrong about something launching sooner than you planned.
Yeah, and you can get sued if you lie to your investors. So
right now, you wouldn't for surprising them with the console, but you would probably piss them off, and they might change their votes next time it's time to re-elect the board.
Yeah, it's a bad look.
So it's the second half of next year seems like it probably is the earliest that it could happen in any event, right? Realistically, Right. Yeah, how much there is to that is hard to say. But I mean, with the whole, as we've said, I think a few times, it's like you've put a lot into. Well, I mean, arguably, they've still been a bit half-assed about it relative to, other companies and so forth. But relative to their own history, they've put a decent amount of effort into building up the Switch Online, base. The actually paying for online play, having catalogs of games tied to that, having, some other things like, the DLC packs as part of an expansion pack, and the, GBA and N64 as part of that. We're actually trying to more aggressively monetize the kind of loyalty of a lot of our, kind of more committed players here who want to keep playing games like Mario Kart 8, Smash Brothers, Splatoon online all the time, and we can make them pay for that and, kind of give them some other sort of sweeteners so that they're happy to do it. And that provides us with, a steady stream, a steady and relatively predictable stream of revenue that is, certainly one of the things that you're looking for. So you just feel like to put the whatever, arguably modest sort of level of investment they've put into that and then somehow like rip it up would be silly. Like that would be very, very silly. But that doesn't necessarily mean that it's just like, everything's going to carry over, basically everything's backwards compatible. You're going to be day one. You're just going to boot up the new model and download whatever purchases, you'd already made and start playing it on that. And it's going to have performance enhancements or any of this sort of stuff. I guess a lot of things are possible, but you really can't take any of that for granted. I guess a lot of it will depend on the particular nature of the hardware. The thing about Switch was it was such a hard break from, a long time, big protracted periods of sort of continuity with the kind of hardware they'd had on their previous systems. And then they went away from that with the NVIDIA chipset. So, presumably you would think that everything that's happened would lead them, to seek to sort of, having had to go through that sort of hard break and everything. And it kind of, the circumstances lent themselves to it anyway, given the way that their previous hardware lines had kind of run their course. Now it would be more a case of, we want to establish, a new continuity with, this kind of, hardware and, keep that going. And that will presumably make it far more plausible and economic to have backwards compatibility. But I think the point about could there be a difference between digital and physical is interesting because I guess, physical media, again, it's got to be, it's become a less significant portion of their sales, as we've mentioned. They brag about that. They're proud of that because it makes them more money. Right. But they're still far, far from the position of being able to walk away from it. That is nowhere near the sort of level they've got to where it's like, okay, no, we don't need to be, at retail or that. In a lot of ways, Nintendo kind of feels like they need it maybe more than certain other parts of the gaming industry, don't they? You know what I mean? Like that the kinds of sales they make might depend a little bit more on, retail footfall than, other parts of the industry. So I think they have to maintain, a physical presence. And then the question becomes, okay, is there some sort of imperative that would lead them to change the format? Because that format's actually pretty old, right? It's basically the Vita card thing. Like they're functionally pretty much the same as those Vita cards were, 11 years ago or whatever it was. So I don't know if there's any sort of at this point, more advantageous format that they could explore. In terms of cost, in terms of memory. But obviously it's it's going against the tide a bit, isn't it? Because physical is getting, de-emphasized.
Well, as games get bigger, obviously that means your storage medium has to be able to hold more, unless you're digital, and then it's just download more bits.
Yeah, well, no, look, we've seen plenty of Switch games from third parties where it's like, okay, well, there's a game card version, and, you can play something on it, but then, you need to download the however many more gigabytes of game from the internet. Like, we've already crossed that threshold, I guess. So, but, there is that. But, if the games are going to be more sophisticated because, with the hardware and they're going to try to take advantage of that, presumably the games are going to be bigger as well, and you are straining the physical card even more than they already have been at that juncture. So, does that mean that it would have to change, and does that therefore imperil, the physical backwards compatibility at that point? It's an interesting question to contemplate.
Yeah. All right, let's move on to the next email. I'm going to ask John to read it.
Scott writes, Hello, RFN. I was thinking about the first year of the Nintendo Flip, Switch 2 first-party releases. I think it's a lock to say the next mainline Super Mario game gets released in that first year. Obviously, Metroid Prime 4 will straddle the outgoing and incoming console.
Did we get this before Wonder was announced?
June 24th.
Well, yeah, but you still got the 3D. You still got your Odyssey.
Okay.
Kind of thing. So it could be simply referring to that.
Maybe.
I think it's a lock to say the next mainline Super Mario game gets released in that first year. Obviously, Metroid Prime 4 will straddle the outgoing and incoming console or arrive exclusively on the Switch 2. If I were a betting man, I think we may also see a 4K remaster of Breath of the Wild with a DLC add-on connecting it better to Tears of the Kingdom, making you, yes you, buy it again. What are your thoughts of that first year of releases on the Nintendo Flip? And actually, I would say it's not going to be called Flip because Samsung already has a phone called the Flip.
Also, that's a fucking terrible name.
It's terrible.
It's particularly in the context of phones, because isn't that just really just meant to like refer to dumb phones or
that one's a foldable phone. It has the foldable OLED, so
it's just like
it makes sense.
It makes sense in one sense, but it does like have negative connotations, doesn't it? When people
although I keep reading articles about how the kids are all about old flip phones these days.
Well, now they're trying to bring flip phones back as a new format, which makes sense. But regardless, it's a bad marketing name. It sounds terrible on the tongue, like Nintendo Flip.
I mean,
no.
So, if only Flip Wilson was still alive to pitch it, you know what I mean?
The Nintendo Flip this fucker. No, ain't calling it that.
You're going to have Jake Plummer to advertise it.
There we go.
Yeah. So we got this email June 24th, but the Super Mario Brunder was announced on the 21st.
Brunder.
So, yeah.
Yeah, so
surely Scott is referring to, like the
Super Mario
3D Mario game.
James is so savage. I was just gonna let it go. James could not.
Well, I predicted that I would say Brunder, and I was like, well, might as well rip the Band-Aid off. That's what it's called now. Yeah.
I honestly, it's just the certainty with which you said it was what got me.
Super Mario Brunder.
It was like there was an inside joke I wasn't part of, and I was just expected to know it. I was like, okay, yeah, Brunder, let's go.
Well, it's just what you already talked about at the time in terms of how many people are going to skip the brothers bit.
Right.
I just say Super Mario Wonder because
I planted the seeds of that joke. A month ago. Come on,
great.
But the alternative to skipping it outright is just to contract and conflate them into Brunder.
Super Mario Wuthers Brunder. Yes.
Super Mario Brunder. Just Brunder sounds like, I don't know, man.
It's a better name than Flip.
Brunder.
It's a wrestler, right? It's got to be Super Mario Brunder. No,
Super Mario Brunder. I mean, it could be a parody wrestler. Like this could be like trying to remember what the name of the parody wrestling company in Japan is. DDT. It could be a DDT one, but they're gonna go wrestle 75 people on the Shinkansen between Osaka and Tokyo as a pay-per-view, which is a real thing they're doing.
No, but the point is, it's regarding a successor to Odyssey as the next mainline game, which it's
based on sales. I might flip them, but okay.
I'm assuming Super Mario Brothers Wonder is in many respects going to be quite mainline and may sell a lot of copies, but I get it. And it's if you're trying to sort of recreate some of that successful first year that Switch had. Odyssey was a very significant part of it. And the thing is that what you don't seemingly have the option to do is, further recreate that first successful year with the big Zelda game because you already did it. It's here. We've played it, and you sold nearly 20 million of it in 8 weeks or whatever. That's wonderful. But you've fired that shot now. You aren't going to have it, presumably, considering that even though it was very significantly based on a game you already made, it took, 6 years for that to come out. Like, even if the timeline for the next system is longer than we think, Zelda, that kind of Zelda game is not going to be part of a first year lineup, but which I assume is why the suggestion is made that we could see a sort of spruced up Breath of the Wild to fulfill that role, which I suppose is not out of the question. But I think it's more awkward than it otherwise might be when it's just like, as I'm sure we've mentioned, talking about Tears of the Kingdom as much as we have, it just like, there's such a level that Tears of the Kingdom kind of goes to kind of like supplant Breath of the Wild rather than just follow it, that it whatever like enhancements or various other things that they could put into a sort of, Game of the Generation edition or whatever for like the next, it would just seem odd to go back. I don't know how much value there would be there.
It would be quite expensive. Like, even just going in and doing like, okay, we're going to make it 4K. We're going to smooth out some stuff. Like, it's going to eat up time that could be going towards that team making the next $10 million in a weekend.
You got to start the clock on that sometime pretty soon if you're gonna have it like vaguely in the sort of first so many years of this new system, right? You're gonna get to, and also it's just gonna be a big decision, like what kind of thing they're gonna do. Do you leave this world you've built behind? How do you do that? They've got a lot to think about there, but I'm sure it's all like exciting possibilities now that Zelda's sort of reached the level of just being an absolute massive seller, in a way that like arguably kind of never has done before. But that still leaves you in a bit of a tricky position for this first year. Like the 3D Mario thing seems like that's perfectly set up. Metroid Prime, I think it would be a decent time to have a Prime 4 come out where it's like, as I'm sure we've said many times, like this launch window where you get people that are, more sort of willing and able to kind of give something a chance that's not necessarily like a game that's like they're sure, as sure as one can be, that they're going to like it. So, like, I think it kind of, we've talked about this many times, it kind of worked for Xenoblade 2 when they did that. So, like, that could be the sort of thing that, would be a decent fit, but there's still just this question of, like, is the game, what sort of state is it? Is it coming together at all? We don't know. We have no idea.
But I see Metroid 4 as something where it's like you said, Greg, like, either you hit it right at launch or you wait. You wait until there's enough of a user base out there because it's not going to be a Mario game. It's not going to just like people aren't going to buy it just off of recognizing that name alone. It's not quite that much of a brand. So, I think you optimally probably release that a couple of years down the line, a couple of years into the life cycle of the system when people have played the latest Mario Kart, played the latest Mario whatever game, and they've gotten that out of their system, and now they're looking for maybe something else like a deeper cut, and so, Metroid Prime 4, that looks really cool.
And this, of course, this question of like, sometimes there's a sort of window of opportunity early in a system's life to get people to look at something that could consider something they wouldn't otherwise do. That is somewhat dependent on the backwards compatibility question from the first part, isn't it? It's like, if the eShop is fully carried over and there's like, look, everybody's still working through the damn Switch backlogs. They're not thinking, oh God, something to play. Thank you.
Right.
The way they were during the Switch's first year more so, which I say, you can't argue the first year of Switch did accomplish the mission, but equally there were definitely, stretches of it where it's like, it's not that replete with stuff because, it was a hard break from Wii U. Obviously, a lot of those games did show up, but because they were having to port it to a new type of hardware, it took time. And, you had these kind of just waiting a lot of the time for Nintendo's kind of next significant kind of gain on a roughly monthly basis, and it wasn't necessarily that much else stuff. So that probably did help people think, you know what, I'll try ARMS. I'll try Splatoon 2. I'll try Xenoblade 2. But none of that might be really in action if the backwards compatibility stuff carries over the way that I think generally, we very much hope it would.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing I would say is if Nintendo would likely miss the ability to resell you those games because they made a lot of money selling you games that they had already sold you. I mean, for fuck's sake, Mario Kart 8. But if Switch had come along and had been able to play Mario Kart 8 if you owned it on Wii U, Nintendo still would have sold tens of millions of units of Mario Kart 8 on Switch because people who didn't have it on Wii U would have still bought it. Honestly, I would say that rather than being a cross-gen game, if backwards compatibility is in play, maybe the successor of Switch would have some kind of benefit for playing Prime on it, but I feel like they're going to honor the fact that they said this was going to be a Switch game. I mean, for fuck's sake, they honored Wii U with Breath of the Wild, and so it seems to me like backwards compatibility is really the only. I basically can't answer this question without that piece of information. Like,
it's a big like domino here, yeah.
Right. And if it's very backwards compatible, then I would say that the launch could be relatively clean. They'd probably want to launch with a couple games that make the system must own right now. So that'd be your Mario slot. They probably wouldn't need to launch with anything new Zelda because they could just say, look, if you didn't play either of the two open air Zelda games, they're still here. You can still play them. They will work. They could try to sell you some of the Zelda back catalog they've already put on Switch, but I think they'd be set that. I think they'd probably want to throw some experimental stuff in there. So, this is where that a platformer starring Princess Peach will release next year.
It's very, very, matter of fact.
Right. Where you start looking at stuff where it's just like they take subject and verb, like, okay, there will be a not racing. There will be a platforming game starring, and somebody in the back rolls dice. It comes back Toad. Fuck! There'll be a Toad-led platforming game. God damn it.
Well, that's got to be one of the big, kind of things, again, if you're trying to recapture some of this success from previous launches. Is it possible for them to have finally Mario Kart go beyond 8 Deluxe, whether they choose to number it or whatever they do, like to have an actually new Mario Kart finally after that sold 55 million now?
I don't think they would do it opposite a new Mario platformer. I think they'd want to give them time between each other.
But we've got a year, haven't we? I mean, because again, the question is a year long, and I mean, if you're going back to Switch's launch, 8 Deluxe was April, and Odyssey was October. So, it was 6 months between them. So not a full year, but they were somewhat spread out, and again, it did seem to work.
The one challenge there is they're still fucking making DLC for Mario Kart 8 right now.
Yeah, although it's like kind of repurposing their tour work. So it's like, they're just kind of almost like they're just finding a way to monetize the work that they were doing anyway in a somewhat different way. Not to diminish, I'm sure there's more work that needs to go into having to work with the Switch game and all that, but it's not all of it. It's not like from scratch, clearly. So, that's part of why you do wonder, like, because of course, the base game from Wii U is really old now. So that would be one of the series that's like, well, that should be first in line, right? Like, they haven't done a new one in so long.
I think it has the Smash problem that Sakurai himself identified, which is where the fuck do you go now?
Where do you go after you've done that? After you've reached that level, you've built up that far? How do you go? And that almost ties a little bit into kind of an additional level of like this whole like backwards compatibility and carryover question. Is just like where you've got these games that sold tens and tens of millions and had a bunch of DLC and all that. It's like, dare you start from scratch, or do you try and offer some sort of, kind of, well, it's backwards compatible, but if you have like essentially like another DLC pass for the new system, it unlocks some sorts of upgrades and further content, but it's not a clean break, because if you execute a clean break, there's just almost no way that whatever comes out in that first year wouldn't seem just horribly paltry by comparison to where those games got at the end. And it's kind of unfair, but that is the comparison that people are going to be left with.
Yeah. So
that's kind of tough, but equally, Mario Kart's so powerful. I mean, it has to be strongly considered, doesn't it, as one of those things you'd love to have in that first year.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like this is what it's going to come down to. Of I'll feel more comfortable answering that question when we know more.
Yeah. You really just kind of in the dark right now. But I mean, this is wishful thinking in all likelihood. But if they, it seems like probably another big original Xenoblade is some years away after 3, and the DLC is now sort of in the books. So if they wanted to mimic that part of the first year of Switch, kind of does leave Xenoblade X as the game to revisit. So, maybe it's wishful thinking, but that would be great if we could get that a chance to escape its own shipwreck that was Wii U.
Oh, good lord. All right, any other predictions or whatever term we want to use for what would be there in year one?
Normally, any other console manufacturer would just try to have like a big visual showcase for a launch game. Nintendo doesn't really do that. I am kind of just assuming that the Switch successor will have like LiDAR technology to use in some way. Why not?
It tracks your feet while you're playing, so it knows what your feet are doing at all times. It doesn't do anything with it, but Nintendo needs to know what your feet are doing.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, for my prediction, I mean, I would have thought this absolutely crazy a year ago, but I'd say probably Batman Arkham City is going to be out first year.
There you go.
At this rate, they just seem to be resurrecting it for every single console ever, so hey, why not?
What's the Switch fitness RPG?
Ring Fit.
Ring Fit, yeah. Sure. Another Ring Fit. Fuck it. This feels like the kind of thing you'd put in the first year of a system.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and that thing made a lot of money.
I mean, it had some very particular circumstances working in its favor to do well, but there's still...
It still does reasonably well.
No, it did.
Yeah. If we're going to call the successor the fucking Flip, we're going to call this one the Cube Fit.
Yeah, I could see them coming out with maybe another version of Super Mario Maker.
Sure. Yeah, that seems right.
It just seems like something that they could turn around easily enough.
Well, and I guess it's a way to hit the 2D Mario thing without having already done Super Mario Bros. Wonder.
Yeah.
You can kind of work that angle, but in a way that's not just like duplicative or a deluxe edition of that game. But I mean, yeah, again, there's only so much Mario that's going to get in that first year, isn't there? So I guess,
right.
And then there's the whole, this promised DK, kind of renaissance they've been threatening for a while, with the movie in being featured pretty prominently in that, and the theme park expansion and all that. Is the next DK game at some point going to be, possibly a first year kind of game? I don't know.
Yeah, that's another candidate. I'm trying to think of what 3D stuff that maybe DK is returning to 3D, and we will all be ashamed. We'll all be scared.
Finally do it right. Let's accentuate the positive fear.
That would definitely need a siren. DK has returned to 3D. Burn. Stay in your homes. Do not buy this game. Lord. All right. Well, I think that will do it for email this week. As always, emails go to rfn@nintendoworldreport.com. Greg, music.
Yes. Well, we had a late surge. It sort of swooped in dramatically quite shortly before recording today with a new request that I had to go with. It was too urgent not to use. So David wrote in saying that they've been listening to their words, not mine, classic RFN episodes in recent times, including the Muscle March discussion from episode 181. So yeah, there's more over 650 episodes ago, specifically 13 and a half years ago, early in 2010.
All right, I feel
that is comical.
Thank you.
Yeah, that is how long ago it was. We would do at that time. We were in the middle of doing the game of the decade sort of nominations for obviously for the noughties, the aughts, however people want to refer to that decade, but also I think it was Voodoo. The long-time listener of ours would use remember this, the gifting feature of the Wii Shop channel to provide John, James, Johnny with copies of Muscle March. He couldn't provide me with it because it didn't work across regional, disparities.
I'm not convinced the gifting feature was ever used for anything but ill.
Yeah, maybe that's why it went away. That certainly is.
I participated in a few Secret Santas.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I gave John Enjoy Your Massage, so that's probably it.
Yeah, you did. You did. You certainly did.
So,
you're really proud of yourself too, aren't you, James?
I was. Still am.
As a result of revisiting this, if you don't remember, which I mean would be quite forgivable, Muscle March was essentially like Hole in the Wall, but with muscular things, not just people, but like, isn't there like a polar bear or
there's
a panda?
A polar bear and a Speedo, yes.
Yeah, it's very, very silly stuff. That came up on WiiWare a long time ago. It really was an arcade game before that, right, and stuff, but
yes.
So we've had a request from the soundtrack here of that game, which I have not actually played because I didn't get gifted it, and I never did buy it for myself. But I have to say it sounds pretty much like, and I mean, I guess it's a bit nebulous, but it's pretty much exactly what I would have imagined. It's just like the sort of Japanese wacky nonsense, basically, just leading into that.
It's
kind
just
of
sound
stuff.
Is the best way to describe it.
With like these vocals and stuff. It's very, very silly, but it's called Pa Love. And yes, I think it's, having not actually played the game, I do think it is evocative of the vibe that it exudes.
Great. Well, on that, it is time for us to go. Bye, everybody.
Later.
Bye.
Bye-bye.